Breaking news. In an unprecedented move, King Charles has just issued a proclamation that stunned the world. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children, Archie and Lilibet, have officially been removed from the royal line of succession. The shocking announcement not only reshapes the monarchy's future, but also leaves Harry and Meghan facing their biggest battle yet. The gates of the palace may be the most enduring to bear the secret, ancient, vast origins of their passage. For generations, the words spoken beyond those gates had the power to shape nothing less than history itself. From wars to marriages to deaths to abs to coronations, signifiers of significance have been reported with all the somberness and weight of Judgment Day. But on this day, the words that echoed from the heart of Buckingham Palace were heard around the world in a manner that took even the most avid royal watchers, historians, supporters, and critics by surprise. In a never-before-seen turn of events, King Charles personally declared that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, were officially stripped of their place in the line of succession. The justification behind this move was crafted in a carefully chosen language that pointed to simmering conflicts inside the palace. Though the words were cryptic and mysterious, they held the weight of finality and they broke something fragile not just in the monarchy, but also in the definition of family. This time it wasn't just Harry and Meghan who were affected by the decision, but two young children who had been considered royals purely by virtue of their bloodline and birthright. They were wiped from the face of the monarchy in one stroke of royal authority. This moment revived the centuries-old question of who is and who is not a member of the House of Windsor, with unprecedented starkness. This was not some arbitrary ruling that appeared out of the blue. It represents decades of fisticuffs, squabbling, and open warfare between the stultifying strictures of monarchy and the teetering edifice of modern celebrity. Since he and Meghan wed, their story has been a struggle of obligation and autonomy, of institution and individualism, of what the crown expects and two people who want something else altogether. This conflict has now engulfed their children, casting the monarchy's dysfunction into the most intimate of spheres, family. The proclamation gives rise to questions that go far beyond a family squabble. What happens when an institution built on blood and lineage realizes that blood and lineage alone are not enough? And what does that tell us about the crown's future when there's a generation already lost to memory before it even understands the context in which we find ourselves in the wake of the announcement? The world was split in two. For others, it was a much-needed reckoning. How could a monarchy that is already under criticism for scandals and controversies dare become more entwined with questions of its legitimacy, its secrecy, unresolved disputes over Harry and Meghan's children? For others, it was an act of cruelty, an institution that prides itself on perpetuity cutting ties with its most vulnerable members, two children who never had a say in the circumstances of their birth or in the controversy that surrounded their parents. To some this was larger than royal protocols or constitutional precedents. It appealed to the heart of human nature, which is why this news has captured the imagination of the entire world in a manner that few royal stories ever do. A deep human tragedy lurks beneath the glamour, in the way that children are not defined by who they are, but by the goals and choices of the adults over their heads. To find the meaning in this moment, one needs to meditate on what succession means. It is something more than a legal procedure or genealogical note. Succession represents the story the monarchy tells about itself, the tissue between the past and the future, and the commitment to a crown that remains through wars, scandals, and centuries. For Archie and Lilibet to be erased from such a story is to be lost to the narrative of the monarchy's history. It's as if they have been erased from the story altogether. In scripting this way, it serves to highlight fundamental questions that question the right of the monarchy. If lineage no longer confers belonging, what does? And if the monarchy can redefine belonging in that way today, why not the next day too? The heart of the story lies in the human aftermath. Once called the Spare, Prince Harry has spent his life in the shadows cast by his trappings of tradition and tragedy. He grew up in the world's fishbowl, particularly during the world's sympathetic response following the death of his mother, Princess Diana, which put him in an anomalous spotlight. His decision to step back from the royal role with Meghan was described as a groundbreaking act of emancipation, an attempt to shake off the institutional shackles he believed had contributed to his mother's demise. But the wheel's recent spin is bringing it right back around to impact his kids. People close to the couple describe Harry as shattered, stricken by a potent cocktail of anger at the palace and deep sadness that his children have found themselves caught up in the ripples of a battle they never wanted. The news for Meghan apparently echoed as a validation of her suspicions. She had warned Harry that the palace would never fully accept her or their children, casting them as forever outsiders no matter their titles or heritage. And as the internal temperature runs hot within the Sussex household, there is nothing of that emotion in the public announcement, no tears shed, just the oblique reference to unresolved issues. This kind of deliberate ambiguity is something of a hallmark of palace tactics, giving just enough away to legitimize an action while nimbly sidestepping more detailed questions. But it also raises questions and speculation. What are the controversies, exactly? Or do they have something to do with the still developing split between Meghan, Harry, and the royals? Are they about rumors of things such as birth records, baptisms, and legitimacy, or do they reach the broader questions of loyalty, behavior, and dependence? By rejecting? For the record, Palace has invited the world to fill in the blanks, and the world is wasting no ink in speculation, insinuation, deliberation. The conclusion of this prologue brings us to the heart of why this story matters. More, why the decision becomes a lightning rod. The exclusion goes beyond Archie and Lily. It highlights the monarchy's fight to modernize in an age where the kind of secrecy that defined it can no longer be preserved, and every decision is examined publicly on a global stage in real time. In removing Harry's offspring, King Charles has chosen to put the monarchy's reputation before family peace. This decision will shape his presidency as much as his inaugural address or his foreign policy. By drawing a line that says loyalty and tradition trump lineage, the royal family is trying to create an out-of-bounds boundary that could end up alienating not only Harry and Meghan but an entire generation that values truth, inclusivity, and authenticity over traditions and hidden motives. In the result, we have a broken family and a monarchy rocking on its heels at the crossroads. 2 children have been cut out of the line of succession, but I am writing a letter to them about a world that has no place for them in it, to them and to the boys and girls they will have, as one cannot spill into a developing country. There is not enough room for you. 2 children have fallen out the line of succession, but it is not them with broken hearts. Their hearts are as whole as the houses and country, the titles, the powders, the medals. All the boys, the girls, the men, the women are bogus and them fraudulent, only we don't say so. Guinea-Bissau, Mozambique, Ceylon, Ethiopia, porn water and cleaner women yards from filthy water, and there except for dirty feet, which the camera follows, blood and a cow shot by soot, but salt is what I see, salt and stars. MG. Wangapika and shit they have means it builds a church and the monks flagellate iron hands. The great question of the future, as we go on, is this: has the monarchy defended itself by isolating itself? Or has the inundation of its kin become the cause of its own destruction? The answers are about to be exposed at last, and we're not talking about nipples or the North here, revealing pictures of the Game of Thrones deleted scenes you were banned from seeing. This is good efficient electricity, a statement from Royal had read, on a bracing morning, its very lack of any sense of revelation eerie. Little more than a textbook television address set against the backstrap of Buckingham Palace in its signature tone of regal authority, the closely worked text hit a bombshell that would reverberate worldwide. After consulting with his most senior of advisors, His Majesty has today issued a proclamation. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor and Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor shall no longer be included in the official line of succession in the midst of unresolved controversies. Although fewer than 100 words long, the statement was chilling and historical, and sent shockwaves of disbelief through watching world. Not only did this unexpected maneuver turn the royal succession on its head, it was also an act that launched a deep reconsideration of old rules about succession and centuries-old traditions of monarchy. To be part of that list is recognition of noting contribution to the continuous narrative of the monarchy. To be excluded is to be booted out of this story. The last time anything like this happened with abdications, divorces and scandals that rocked the crown in the 20th century, but never before have such young and innocent children been singled out this way. This is what made the announcement so shocking. It was not a prince or a duchess born there who was in danger of being made marginal. It was babies who just so happened to be born into a house divided. Footage of the family played in news broadcasts on repeat, Harry and Meghan holding hands, photos from their son Archie's christening, rare images of their daughter Lilibet that the couple had made public. Suddenly, these symbols of hope for a modern monarch were transformed into a symbol of dashed hope. Talking heads on the airwaves parsed every word of the announcement, dwelling on the phrase unresolved controversies as if it were a riddle. What were the controversies referred to by the palace? No explanation was offered, providing only more food for thought/train of thought. Did this have to do with Meghan's fractured relationship with family? Was it to do with persistent rumors about the paternity documentation for the children, or was it a wider dressing down for Harry and Meghan in defying royal traditions? The palace was silent, the silence fertile ground for the flourishing ecosystem of speculation. Public reactions were a mirror of the parts of the London streets where there have long been fault lines of opinion about Harry and Meghan. Interviews with passers-by exposed a divide. Some were shocked, lamenting, their children, for heaven's sake. How could the monarchy accept this? Others got behind the decision, saying, the monarchy needs to protect itself. Too many questions and too much noise has been kicked up. Its stability cannot be compromised. In the United States, where Harry and Meghan were setting up their new life, the response was largely sympathetic. American commentators painted the relocation as retaliatory, using it as evidence that the palace never truly accepted Meghan into the Commonwealth. The reaction across countries already questioning their ties to the monarchy was more subtle. This decision apparently epitomized a backwards institution clinging to keep its power via exclusion as opposed to progression. In Britain, the right-wing Sun and Daily Mail newspapers predictably took sides and ran what, by any standard, appeared to be damning headlines. King protects monarchy from Sussex scandal, minors moved away for Crown's own good, were the kinder headlines, and broadsheets like The Guardian and Independent sounded a more skeptical note, examining the propriety of deploying minors in grown-up conflicts. Back home, late-night and satirical TV shows have milked it for sardonic laughs, sending up the palace's rhetoric and using the case as a prism for the absurdity of punishing young children over controversies they cannot possibly understand. The story became more than just snippets of royal news. It grew into an international spectator sport, intertwining tragedy and scandal. Though the attention loop reverberated when the news broke, the focus ultimately landed on Harry and Meghan. Were they likely to step in? Or remain silent in Montecito? Paparazzi stormed the house looking for an indication that they had heard. The night Harry's car drove away, it was a sad, intense sight that neighbors witnessed, his car slowly pulling out of our long driveway after midnight. Meanwhile, Meghan was spotted at a local cafe a few days later, her face hidden behind giant sunglasses but her body language that of a woman under pressure. While the couple remained tight-lipped during those crucial hours, sources have claimed there was seething fury just bubbling under. Unnamed friends were quoted as saying that they could never cross that line, and now they have. The news of driving finally legal is not to be underestimated, especially now. Charles is early in his reign at a time when the monarchy has been rattled by public skepticism and scandals involving Prince Andrew. Continuous aftershocks of the Diana legacy and mounting pressure from the Commonwealth nations for dissociation all loom large over his crown. Some royal watchers argue that this announcement was also a calculated one, a show of strength and control at a time when the monarchy appears vulnerable, firmly marking the lines against Harry and Meghan's branch of the family. Charles could be trying to reassure traditionalists that the royal family is strong, solid, and not afraid to make tough choices. The problem with this approach, and it's a heavy one, is damage to the family relationship which may never be fully repaired. One side aspect that leaps out at me is how the full weight of the monarchy, in terms of history, clashes so jarringly with the personal impact of this decision. Imagine a future where Harry and Meghan have to tell Archie why his name isn't on the list of succession. Imagine the irony of Lee, who bears the name of the Queen, learning that the family that she was named after has in effect abandoned her. These are questions that have real deep wounds. This is not just some hypothetical academic exercise, but real pain that is going to scar these kids' sense of their self for years to come. These wounds, in the court of public opinion, will be just as weighty as any fat legal decrees. While the monarchy may decide on the line of succession, it cannot dictate the empathy that millions feel over this story of innocence thrown up against the wheels of power. There was great excitement when Archie was born in May 2019. He was the first mixed-race child of the immediate royal family, marking a modernization in an institution criticized for being out of touch with modern times. Newspapers dubbed him a new type of Windsor, someone who could reconcile centuries-old traditions with the ever more variegated realities of modern Britain. Images of Harry and Meghan proudly cradling their brand-new son against the regal backdrop of Windsor Castle became instant iconography. Onlookers viewed it as a historical moment not only due to the prince's royal birth but also because his very presence defied traditional ideas of princeliness. Lee's arrival in June 2021 was equally symbolic, as she shares a name with her great-grandmother, Queen Elizabeth. Her appointment was hailed as a mark of continuity. Born on another continent, but joined by name and blood to the heart of the monarchy. But under the joyful exterior, under the christening gowns and protocol-heavy family portraits, uncertainty about where such children really fit in the royal family had already set in. In legal terms, both Archie and Lily Bit were supposed to have their place in the line of succession. They were behind their father, Harry, so would originally have been 7th and 8th in line. Their names were quickly posted on the official royal platforms upon being born, symbolizing accepted and included. For Harry and Meghan, it was a guarantee that no matter how much they bristled against the palace, their children's place in the future of the monarchy would be protected. The announcement the king has just made has rudely shaken this concept of themselves out of balance of the factor of history. It's not just a list, however, it is the official version of the ongoing story of the monarchy. Every name in that line is a slender but essential strand in the weave of royal lineage. For this it is either, to be or not to be, either included in the future crown, to wit, united to the same, or excluded therefrom, that is to say, to have the thread of our existence cut. For Archie and Lily Bit, their dethroning is not just a matter of losing a ceremonial rank. Rejection of acceptance, so to speak. In other words, it is the royal residence saying, in fact, that although it hails from royal stock, it cannot count on the royal nod. This differentiation is essential. Lineage creates blood relation, but recognition creates legitimacy. And legitimacy is the essence of monarchy. Consider how substantial the exclusion is by comparison with examples from history. Succession crises have plagued monarchies over the centuries, from Edward III's abdication in 1936 to feuding during the Tudor era. Questions of legitimacy have often been a source of instability and upheaval. But what makes the case of Archie and Lily Bit different is simply their youth and innocence. They are not adult decision-making taking place in contradiction of the tradition. These are children with lives that are freshly starting. Their disappearance underscores not what they did, but what their parents did. It prompts uncomfortable questions. Are these kiddos being punished for the Harry and Meghan drama? Is this a combination of both lineage-based and behavior-based conduct? More importantly, what does it mean for the future perception of an inclusive monarchy? Determined not only by ancestry, but also by whether or not one meets certain standards? Archie's baptism, again, garnered a great deal of interest mostly because of the high level of secrecy with which it was conducted. Unlike other royal baptisms, which were public spectacles with official photos and many VIPs, Harry and Meghan opted for a private ceremony. Only a handful of pictures were released to the public and the names of Archie's godparents were kept private. First considered a break of tradition by royal observers, proponents later defended this choice, stating that it played a gesture to keep private. These actions, said in the light of the king's decision, are open to review. What once seemed like a small break from tradition now appears to represent a wider split between the Sussex children and the monarchy. It's easy to look back now and see red flags. While blood connected Archie and Lily Diana to the royal family, they were never taken to its establishment embrace. Their names symbolize the reason for their exclusion. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor embodies both the grandeur of lineage, with its pedigreed Windsor ancestors, and the modern-day personal touch of the less name his parents selected. Likewise, the name Lily Diana, which pays homage to the late Princess Diana and the Queen in one fell swoop, was supposed to be about linking the old with the new and continuity from one monarch to the next. As Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties by agreeing to remove themselves from the line of succession, the palace didn't just wipe their identities from the official records, it also severed the symbolic ties they each embodied. Especially remarkable was the burden of history carried in their names. So Twaddle's parents will be laid to rest in another church, used now for storage, as a chilling reminder that tradition can't even erase their parents' controversies. Its takedown around the world has reignited conversations about the symbolism of the monarchy. Succession lists are seen as both distant and ceremonial, with little day-to-day bearing on the lives of many Britons. But for the millions around the world and particularly millions in the Commonwealth as well, the monarchy is also about continuity and inclusivity. The fact that children are barred from this continuity begs the question whether the monarchy is not about inclusion, but about exclusion. The complications continue because they demonstrate diversity in the royal bloodline. For others, their departure is a step back and a denial of progress. For others, however, it's a vital firewall against the perceived chaos of Harry and Meghan. Whether or not Archie and Lily Bitt were unique beings in their time, they have become symbols as much as personalities. Their place in history cannot be taken lightly in emotional terms. Archie and Lily Bitt will grow old enough to understand what happened, eventually. They will find that they were once the official future of the monarchy, but their names were scrubbed before they could quite comprehend that. The emotional fallout from being publicly disowned by an organization that stands for both family and country is devastating. Their place in history will forever have an asterisk, as the descendants of a prince but taken in such a way. Their story has already taken its place in royal history, no less than the heirs but as warning figures in the annals of the monarchy. This chapter is not only about the placing of Archie and Lily, but the fact that they were both in a list and then removed. Their fleeting presence was a monarchy that was open to change, that wanted to reflect the realities of a modern world in which it no longer was dictating the standard by which citizens should be able to marry the person they loved. By contrast, the absence of the princes represents a monarchy regressing to lock tradition and exclusion in to defend itself. This comparison serves to emphasize the poignancy of their place in history. For a second, Archie and Lily were the promise of a more diverse, inclusive and representative crown. But since their names were taken away, the Scarlet Knights have come to signify the price of rebellion, the cost of controversy, the perils of being in the club when no one else except the legacy alone gets you in. The two words that the king deployed in his announcement, which he delivered and meant as precisely as a loaded die, are layered with meaning, ambiguity, and peril. They are both a shield and a sword. A shield, in that they allow the monarchy to swerve specifics while affirming an historic but agonizing decision, a sword, because they have a profound impact on public perception, leaving lots of room for speculation, gossip, and doubt. By choosing not to get out in front of those controversies, the palace guaranteed that the public would be left to wonder and doubt about Harry, Meghan, and their children, to imagine any number of rumors, instead of getting a clear answer from the Duchess herself. The ambiguity at the heart of this still-going debate is what keeps it interesting. The hanging remains in limbo for eternity. To understand the fraught subjects of these arguments, we need to delve into the complex and stormy history of the Sussexes' relationship with the royal family. Harry and Meghan were the originators of both hope and risk. Their marriage was initially heralded as a union of tradition and modernity, a royal prince marrying an American actress of mixed background, emblematic of the monarchy's evolution. But the honeymoon period was brief. Claims of rifts within the palace, reports of staffers being unhappy, the perception of rifts within the family, and Meghan's own claims of being ill-treated turned what had once looked like some fairy tale into more of a disaster story. Each of these episodes grew into mid-controversies of their own, evergreen in that they were never fully explained, accepted, or managed. One of the early scandals was that no one could see the baby and they were perplexed by the secrecy surrounding his birth. Unlike previous royal births where the public was informed and hospital visits staged, Harry and Meghan opted for secrecy. They delayed the announcement, published only a handful of photos and strictly limited information. Their advocates saw this as a privacy protection move, but opponents saw it as a conscious desecration of tradition, breeding suspicion. Rumors started swirling about Meghan Markle's birth circumstances, the sequence of events, question of why there was a slowness in the paperwork and the palace's supposed reluctance to confirm the details. Though it was never confirmed, the mystery behind the gossip obviously kept it in circulation. There are still debates to this day about Archie's birthright and his place in the line of succession. The christenings of Archie and Lily only deepened that suspicion. The christening would normally have been a grand affair that was publicly celebrated and attended by more senior members of the family with full details confirmed in official photographs and announcements. Instead, Harry and Meghan opted for privacy, shrouding their services in an intimate air of secrecy and refusing to name the godparents, claiming it was a matter of privacy. They released hand-picked photos rather than the media swooping in. What was designed as the setting of a limit was falsely interpreted as a cover-up, giving rise to rumors. The issue at hand here was not the baptisms but the couple's break with an old royal custom, a move that only served to strengthen the perception that Harry and Meghan did not really care to play by the rules when it came even to their children's status. Another level of undiscussed dispute revolves around the question of titles. There was a debate over whether Archie would be styled as a prince when he was born. Meghan later claimed the palace had refused his requested a title on purpose and due to racist motives, an allegation dismissed by royal experts, who said he couldn't have received one until Charles was king. The gulf between Meghan's perspective of the christening and the palace version of events has left a question mark over what happened on several counts, not least of which was the issue of a title, which could be interpreted as little more than a snub based on a technicality of constitutional protocol. The truth was never made clear, and this unsolved mystery turned out to be yet another unexplained hole. The ongoing uncertainty over the titles of Archie and Lilibet can be read as an indication of a possible, more general exclusion. Then there is the explosive aftermath of Meghan and Harry's 2021 interview with Oprah Winfrey in which they accused the royal family of racism. Meghan described conversations in which unnamed family members had expressed concern about the toddler's possible skin color. Although Harry confirmed that such talks had taken place, he did not name the individual. The revelation had a global fallout that forced the palace to issue its now famous statement, "Recollections may vary." The phrase didn't help tamp down on the controversy. In fact, it widened divisions rather than bridging them, with people across the board debating if Meghan and Harry were telling the truth or whether the palace placed a higher priority on itself than anything else. The lingering suspicion of racism has not gone away. In fact, it casts shadows not just over Meghan and Harry, but over their children, because it's their children who are at the center of these concerns. Then there is the nebulous issue of money, always cloaked in contention. Harry and Meghan have signed commercial deals with Netflix and Spotify, as well as publishers. Since stepping back from their royal roles, they have faced questions about the degree to which they are trading on their royal ties. Critics suggest that their loyalty to the palace was purchased with, though not limited to, their being iced out by the palace financially, while supporters had no choice. The palace didn't address such matters head-on, leaving open the question of whether unwritten royal conduct codes were breached. There is no official ruling or closure until now on the controversy. Some see such financial dealings as a betrayal of duty, one that might have excused harsher treatment by the monarchy, even its children. One of the most delicate and unresolved controversies surrounds the legitimacy of Harry and Meghan's broader allegations about being mistreated, and about Meghan's own experience of mental ill health. Cries for help and cries of being trapped, Meghan and Harry's account has generated sympathy but also skepticism. The palace has yet to confirm or deny these details, choosing silence over outright confrontation. This silence only adds to the fact that these things are lingering about as part of a kind of treasury of unanswered grievances that feed those who say that the children should clean up after their warring parents. It is important to realize that the palace uses the ambiguity by pointing to closed question without details as not to prove or disprove any individual claim in particular. This game then forces interpretation of statements onto the masses and allows each faction to read it as they see fit. This is a phrase that the royalists use in order to justify exclusion and to suggest that there are matters too important to overlook. In another narrative, if you're a fan of Harry and Meghan, the phrase is a denunciation of palace cruelty, a rationale for which children may be punished for things that are not their fault. Ambiguity makes that debate permanent, a strategic act that would have devastating familial consequences. The final level of dispute, which goes without saying but is implicit, involves trust. Harry and Meghan have kept up their endless series of projects such as books, interviews and documentaries, which sits uncomfortably with the palace. Every conversation has the potential to be leaked. Every private moment is in danger of being turned into a public spectacle, which undermines the central principle of discretion on which the monarchy is based. That is the ultimate betrayal. The real issue here is not any one particular incident, but that Harry and Meghan have been losing trust in the institution in general, day by day. Discard one and the other falls. Without trust, we cannot feel that we belong. So the ousting of Archie and Lilibet is not just down to their own deeds, but they are a symbol of the palace's fears for the consequences of their parents' actions. Instead, the king has opened not one new chapter, but several. And every unanswered controversy grows its own narrative, generating theories and prompting split opinions and making sure the shadow hanging over Archie and Lilibet will never completely go away. While the monarchy's message is clear, the lack of specifics leaves the world to interpret its meaning. 95 It is in that area of interpretation that the real power of controversy lies. It cannot be answered with facts, but by opinion. This is not a remote turn of events for Prince Harry, but an intimately wrenching one that cuts to his dual identity as royalty and private individual. The declaration of King Charles goes far beyond titles, or even succession. This feels in many ways to Harry like a memory of old times, another verse in the epic story of Harry the Grot, that his life has mostly been. In order to understand his predicament, one must go back to the very beginning of his agony, because this is not just a question of a decision made on objective merits, it is the decision that has struck the man who has never healed his wounds. The second in line, Harry has long been a source of tension for the monarchy. It was his position that was formed from a young age, being close to power without ever having it. As he resided in his brother William's shadow, his days were a series of unspoken references, of expectations and of whispered recognition of his importance, but not of his necessity. This existence of two lives marked his character. He was freed of the cares of kingship on one side, and forever felt himself uncalled for, on the other. In the wake of Diana's tragic death, that shadow became even darker. And the monarchy, trying to steady itself, needed both grieving boys to be able to show a public composure. Harry still recalls walking behind his mother's coffin, forced to carry out duties for the cameras when he was but a child and too young to fully understand what was expected of him. The memory of that, I can remember him saying, inspired him to make sure the same thing wasn't going to happen to his own children. And here he is today, decades later, facing the bitter irony that his children are now getting ensnared in the very same system he sought to escape. Harry's angst is not simply anger towards his father, or a form of grief. For Archie and Lily Bit, it would be a collision of two worlds within him, the boy protecting his family and the prince ensnared in an institution that is at the core of his heritage. His intimates describe his reaction to the king's announcement as one of disbelief and grief. In private conversations, Harry said, it felt as if his children had been erased. For a guy whose entire life has been shaped by his mother's absence, that's a thought with an unbearable heaviness. For Harry, erasure is political and also existential. Some of Harry's conflict arises from his guilt. Leaving royal life and carving out a new way of life across the Atlantic, he remained a strong champion, saying it was the only way to protect Meghan and the children from facing the unrelenting scrutiny of the British media and the detachment of the palace. But now that Archie and Lily Bit are not in direct succession to the throne, he cannot dodge the issue. Were his decisions factors in what happened? Was his rejection of tradition making his own children vulnerable to harm? This guilt consumes him. Friends say he veers between anger at the institution and self-recrimination. Occasionally, he makes the palace responsible for its severity. At other times, he wonders if his deeds, interviews, memoirs and documentaries gave the monarchy an alibi to hit back. The subtle nature of truth is in sharp contrast to the crushing blanket of guilt that Harry is under. His mental health has been an issue for some time, but this latest crisis has made it worse. Harry has been open about his continued struggles with anxiety, depression, and trauma, and he recounted in his writings and interviews the intense panic attacks, outbursts of rage, and pervasive sense of powerlessness that have hounded him over the years. Therapy provided a measure of relief, but those in his circle now fear that the recent announcement from the royal family will only serve to allow old wounds to be reopened. To Harry, every perceived slight from the palace is not merely political, it is deeply personal, entangled with a life lived haunted by the feeling that he's been dismissed and misunderstood. The specter of his Meghan's fate hangs heavy in the air, as Harry sees patterns of chilling disloyalty to the family and duty towards the institution, and the old fears rise to the surface. For Harry, the stakes are high, and go far beyond the denial of succession rights to his children. His battle, at the core, is to fight the demons of déjà vu. Also, his marriage to Meghan adds another layer of upheaval. Harry may be a steadfast loyal partner to Meghan, his loyalty's now the engine that colors all of his dealings with the palace too. Critics say Meghan's allure led Harry astray from his duties, supporters say her strength freed him from a toxic environment. In the end, Harry knows that the palace's disavowal of his children is a rejection of his marriage, a clear signal that the family he has created is still on the margins of the monarchy's future. The sick reality of this is devastating to Harry. To love Meghan, or their children, is to, in the eyes of the palace, willingly stand beyond the inner circle. It's one he has no regrets about, in spite of its personal costs, among them the loss of the entitlement, recognition, belonging he used to take for granted. Underlying it all is the fact that he has this highly unattainable father. Charles and Harry have always been estranged, not close. If Diana was the emotional comfort during Harry's childhood, Charles was often considered aloof, duty-bound rather than close. When Harry tried to reconcile in his adulthood back then, it only made the king more cantankerous, compounds their differences and leads to his estrangement. Now, Archie and Lily's arrival have made that divide for Harry. It seems like the ultimate betrayal, not merely a monarch's constitutional decision but a father severing his grandchildren. This king and father, by this double right, hath her soul, and with such a wound, he may as easily cure one, is a very deep one. How does one separate the crown from the man, the king from the father? The true conflict for Harry is not in his royalty but the lack of liberty he has to act. Every step Charles makes as the monarch echoes through Harry's soul as if his father did the deed. This specific gesture, more than any of the others, reads as abandonment to him. The harrowing level of public shame only adds to his misery. Unlike most fathers, Harry is not allowed the indulgence of grieving in private. Every gesture, every word, every silence that he performs is judged with precision. Every time he steps out in public looking serious, he is taken to be a broken man by hysterical headlines. When he does occasionally give a crowd a brief smile, the tabloids accuses him of being uncaring. And this is all happening with him struggling under the public's gaze, where he simply has zero room for authenticity. The same press that tormented his mother now follows him, turning his anguish into a spectacle. The constant observation does nothing but immerse himself in isolation. Retreating into seclusion triggers charges of a hidden agenda, but speaking out brings charges of disloyalty. For Harry, however, it is merely two alternatives to be criticized in an endless, lose-lose scenario that is probably the most cruel part of his curse. In his solitary moments, Harry's grief comes out in pondering moments. His friends say they have seen him spend hours going through the family albums, especially those featuring Diana. He finds himself thinking a lot about what she would have thought of this situation. He is always referring to her, explaining any decision as an attempt to honor her memory by breaking the cycle of suffering. But even this is filled with sadness as he realizes that Diana has been stripped of her titles and abandoned by the very institution that she used to represent. In the removal of Archie and Lilibet titles, he sees his mother's own downgrading, on a smaller scale. Preserving itself again has proved more important than showing compassion and control more important than inclusion. This is not merely some remote historical analog for Harry. It's a chilling sign that the fights his mother fought are not yet over, and that his children are in their midst. Angry and grief-stricken though he is, Harry is still certain that he is doing the right thing. Friends say that, while a grieving Harry is in quite a state right now, he is possessed of a steely core that is perfectly willing to do whatever is necessary to protect his family, whatever the cost to himself, and even if it means the end of his association with the monarchy. He's already made it clear he's ready to sacrifice his status for his family's health. That resolve will, now, be tested even more. His fight may be a lonely one, but it doesn't dampen his resolve. If the palace thinks that taking Archie and Lilibet away from Harry will be a way to weaken him, they may have to think again. It might only stiffen his resolve to define his children's identities outside of the limitations of royalty. His job is to make sure his kids are raised knowing their worth, even if the monarchy doesn't recognize it. His battle is not just about a prince losing his way through the ranks, it's about a father fighting for his kids not to go through the same hurt he had during his own upbringing. Whether he can make the leap is an open question, but the trip itself has already refashioned his public persona for a global audience. He is no longer hopelessness or a rebel prince. A man dripping with sorrow, a father struggling to reconcile mercenary warfare with male kinship, a son who is confronted with the hard truth of a king who has chosen power over blood. Meghan Markle is frequently described as loud, calculating or dramatic by critics. The king's announcement has elicited a response from her fans that even the most hardcore fans are left gasping for words. The cameras caught her walking swiftly out of a Montecito cafe, the sun in her eyes, her face shielded by sunglasses, shoulders squared, jaw pressed shut. More than any news release, her silence spoke volumes to those who knew her well. It was not neutrality but some cocktail of contained rage, grief, restraint, and strategic calculation. The removal of Archie and Lilibet from the line of succession was not just another chapter in her fight with the palace. It was the final proof of her long-held fear that the institution would never accept her children because it never really accepted her. Meghan has had a fraught relationship with the monarchy from the very beginning. Her marriage to Harry was cast at first as a modern fairy tale, but even before its tumultuous conclusion, glimpses of restraint could be seen beneath the grandeur and the glare of the spotlight. She was not a British aristocrat, she was American, biracial, divorced, and frequently studied and worked as an actor, in every sense of the word. She broke the mold of what was expected of a royal bride at the same time as her wedding was being feted publicly. Whispers inside the palace spoke of doubt, even animosity. Meghan later said in interviews that she had felt unsupported, severely monitored and left alone by the institution, a sense of isolation that now seems prescient to her in raising her children. Without one bit of recognition, the snubbing that she had been handed to the next generation. And so Meghan's response is a tricky calculus of maternal grief, personal triumph, and steely determination. Her maternal anguish is profound. To Meghan, motherhood has long been about protection. She is told of being suicidal when she was pregnant with Archie and how the demands at the palace threatened her mental health. Some people have belittled what she revealed, others have used it against her, but those stories are fundamental to who she is as a parent. This is a woman who has always presented herself as someone who would take the life of her kiddos if they were in danger. And now, with the monarchy officially isolating them, the fight has added an urgency, her backers say. She describes this as the ultimate line crossed, one that can never be uncrossed. It's no longer about her titles, her status, this is now about marriage. It is now about Archie and Lily's future. She sees the palace working to take them down, before they can even figure out who they are. But even in this grief, there is a somber satisfaction. Meghan has consistently argued that the palace never intended to treat her fairly. From comments she made about differences in memory in the wake of the Oprah interview, to the ceaseless tabloid attacks she alleged were deployed by palace insiders. Meghan's always seen herself as a victim of systemic hostility. She says that this announcement confirms her own beliefs. From her perspective, the monarchy has implicitly accepted what she has been trying to tell the world for years: her family, no matter its lineage, will always be outsiders. That validation doesn't make her suffering go away, but it does make her more determined. Meghan has built her public persona on strength, overcoming difficult circumstances, standing up straight in the face of resistance. The palace's decision to not silence her but to instead respond has given her a new platform in which to argue that she and her children were mistreated by one of the most powerful institutions in the world. Meghan's rage isn't just emotional, it's strategic. She knows the power of a story. Before she was a duchess, she was an actress, schooled in the importance of presentation, perception, and timing. Since stepping down as a senior member of the royal family, she has carefully crafted a brand of advocacy, empowerment, and self-sufficiency. Every speech, podcast, and interview is fine-tuned to articulate these key messages. It's not exactly happy news, but for her it's a fresh beginning for her brand. Now, she can cast herself not just as a victim of palace hostility, but as a mother who had her children deliberately left off the list. This story is so beloved to people, especially in this country. Already there is quite a chorus of support for Meghan. She'll probably, the more optimistic observers speculate, eventually face the issue head-on in a big interview, shaping her story around the injustice of using children as pawns in adult conflicts. But Meghan's reaction is not only a public one. There is also the issue of the personal connected to her long fight with identity and belonging. As a biracial woman, she has often spoken about what existing in the space between two different worlds, one never able to fully embrace her, is like. That very same internal tug-of-war now plays out in the lives of her children, Archie and Lily, who themselves now find themselves caught between two worlds, born into royalty, if without the paperwork to prove it. Meghan sees herself reflected in their exclusion in that she has always been in the mix but not all in. This resemblance amplifies her sense of grievance, because it means that her children are doomed to confront the same existential question of belonging with which she has struggled. Her greatest fear is not that the pair will be denied titles, but that one day they will grow up and have the knowledge that they were snubbed by their own family before they could speak. Her critics, of course, read her reaction in opposite directions. The British tabloids depict Meghan's silence as deliberate, implying she is plotting as to how she might profit from the way she has been treated. They say she sees every crisis as an opportunity to use her influence for the better, position herself as a victim and, at the same time, to redeem by reaping attention. In this story, it is not grief that we see on the face of Meghan but the look of someone calculating his next move. A lady who, after stinking out the royal shit cake, is determined to win favor with the public. Those rants and raves may sting, but as a consecutive narrative, they only ironically underwrite Meghan's larger sense of self-pity and persecution. It all comes down to her being ceaselessly targeted no matter what she does and no matter how righteously she acts, all for the benefit of her fans. Such criticism only reinforces the belief that she's targeted for who, rather than what she is. Meghan's retaliation is also to manifest in her marriage. Indeed, her relationship with Harry has been portrayed as both passionate and tortured for years. As a pair, they strike a united pose, often photographed holding hands at public events, leaning into each other in a display of unity. But privately, the dissonance is palpable. Meghan apparently pointed out to Harry that she had warned him this would happen before warning him that the palace would never accept their children. It triggers guilt for Harry, but it makes Meghan feel even more vindicated. Their marriage, which was already put to the test by her family's rejection, now faces its sternest challenge. Still, the depth of their battles only serves to strengthen their connection. And even as they are estranged from the royal palace, they're focused on protecting their children from additional pain. The more Meghan's response is examined, the more obvious it is that the decision has been a game-changer in her role in the narrative that is the royal story. Today, the Duchess of York, best known for her battles with the palace, has been transformed into a mother battling for her children's birthright. This seismic change in tone transforms her entire narrative, moving her from the realm of royal intrigue to the campfire, reassuring any reader who has ever sensed a parent's primal imperative to protect its young. Meghan is now more than merely a public figure who courts division of opinion. She is a mother who's been wronged, and that's a role to which anyone can relate. While the palace has removed her children from the succession line, it has left her with a moral argument that will reverberate well beyond the borders of Britain. So okay, Dwight said Howard needs to apologize to her in order to fix it, but while her silence may be temporary, her ache is unbreakable. She now faces choices that will not only set the tone of her own legacy, but will help determine her children's understanding of their place in the world as they grow up. Will she go nuclear by telling further truths and making allegations, or will she bide her time and let the consequences take care of themselves as she steps back in order to protect her children from the family business? Either way, there is one fact we can take to the bank: her answer is anything but passive and will shape the next chapter of her face-off with the royal family. Now this struggle has grown to include her two kids, who have turned into figures of hope, but also exclusion. In the immediate aftermath of the palace's declaration, media across the globe rushed to respond. TV hosts, radio presenters, online writers, and social media figures weighed in, each seeing the news through their own prism. British TV commentators called the King's announcement historic, unprecedented, and necessary. American television talk show hosts raged, calling it cruel, vindictive, and discriminatory. In Europe, the story was met as a spectacle as well as a cautionary tale of hereditary institutions. The craze went worldwide and never let up. There was wide variety of opinion, not two readings being quite alike. The split was apparent from the start. For many in the United Kingdom, where loyalty to the monarchy is built in from an early age, the decision was considered a necessary move for stability. Advocates of King Charles contended that by not resolving disputes over the succession, the crown was itself made impotent. Newspapers echoed those feelings in their headlines. The king moves in to protect the crown from new drama in Sussex. The move was toward not good, but not all that bad, depending on who you asked. The Daily Mail reports that the king was acting to protect the crown from the drama in Sussex, while the Telegraph called it regal, bold, and necessary. These narratives presented Charles as a man of firm resolution, unafraid to take the hard, but necessary choices. But not all sections of the British media saw it that way. The generally anti-monarchy Guardian expressed concerns about the ethics of punishing children over, or at least caught up in, adult arguments. Their banner, "Innocent Children Suffering Injustice," said it all. It was a headline that effectively captured the public mood, a feeling that had extended even to Archie and Lily, who were not innocent bystanders in a wider battle. American news coverage of the announcement also portrayed a very different story, showing U.S. audiences to be more sympathetic to Harry and Meghan, viewing the statement as severe, one of a vicious rejection. The decision to exile her from the UK could only have been made by those who are tone-deaf, or who are garnishing their salads with bias, but by almost any measure, regardless of how one feels about the royals or Megxit, it was the wrong decision on every level. CNN and MSNBC have camped out on stories from Meghan's past, speaking in depth about her bringer spread to the royal family, illuminating the story of the first biracial royal, unearthing racial bias in the British monarchy, discussing the racist press coverage in the UK and predicting a class war. Instead of focusing on constitutional issues, the narrative was framed as a family betrayal. Oprah Winfrey, whose explosive 2021 interview with the Sussexes is still sending waves through the royal family, got a lot of mentions in the coverage. The exclusion of Archie and Lily seemed to confirm Meghan's assertions that the palace has always had a hostility for her family. This viewpoint was amplified on social media with hashtags like #JusticeForArchie and #StandWithMeghan swiftly trending. American late-night comedians made fun of the palace, depicting it as antiquated and draconian, and daytime talk shows brought on experts to dissect what it meant for Harry and Meghan's future plans. At the same time, the announcement reignited debate in Commonwealth countries about whether ties to the monarchy should be maintained. In countries such as Canada, Australia, and the Caribbean, commentators connected the exclusion of Archie and Lily to wider arguments over the relevance of the monarchy in regions already considering moves to republicanism. This was the argument that illustrates why the monarchy was now out of step with contemporary values. The argument was simple: the royal family couldn't treat their own grandchildren this way, and then pretend to be a conduit for diverse nations from all around the world. In Jamaica, which saw growing Republican sentiment, newspapers made explicit connections between the verdict and calls for independence, arguing that the monarchy's behavior revealed an institution unyielding to reform. Children were involved, and that added to the emotion of online and offline discussions about the situation. What had been a mere news item became a kind of global entertainment event into which everyone joined in to speculate and judge alike. The novelty of this media storm was its focus on the emotional cost of the situation, especially with the children, forcing the questions about the monarchy's humanity and moral high ground. Commenters were forced to confront the ethics of children being used as ammunition in institutional warfare, moral quandaries which were left unresolved but lingered salaciously at the front of the public mind across the globe. The frenzy was driven further by the palace's refusal to comment on lingering controversies. Like any good mystery, with no additional information, there was rampant speculation, as every commentator had their own theory. Some speculated it was about concerns over the legitimacy of birth certificates, others said it was a reprimand for Harry's memoir and Meghan's interviews. Another perspective was that the alleged DNA test was a tactical move to maintain the unquestioned lineage of Prince William. That ambiguity would ensure that the story stayed alive and that it would continue to grow, propelled by the endless churn of the media attention, the punditry, and the outrage of those of us watching it all unfold. The divide seeped into family, workplace, and community conversations around the world. As the debates raged across Britain, the discussions in American taverns grew spirited. It featured at the dinner table, and teachers said they heard discussions in classrooms, so its effect on societal awareness was powerful. and celebrities weighed in, with some publicly standing up for Meghan while others defended the institution of the monarchy. Every new perspective added to the controversy, and the pot continued to boil. Never before has a single royal announcement triggered weeks of debate that have crossed borders, cultures, and ages. Central to this media storm of attention, of course, is the continued obsession with the royal family. The monarchy has long managed to both captivate and humanize itself by projecting an image that is both unapproachable yet with which many can identify. This announcement disrupted that equilibrium. In bringing Archie and Lily Bit into this drama, the monarchy forced the world to grapple with uncomfortable issues of legitimacy, justice, and love. The media mania was not so much about the children but about what their removal suggested of the crown itself. In this regard, the public divide was a question not just about empathy with, or critique of, but also about whether the monarchy still could claim a mantle of moral authority in the modern age. Diana. Whenever drama, scandal, or heartache befalls the royal family, the former Princess of Wales inevitably reemerges in the public consciousness. The announcement that Archie and Lily Bit are being excluded from the line of succession has been no different. Then, commentators and the public began comparing what Diana had gone through under the monarchy with what the children of Harry are currently facing. The parallels are eerie, almost surreal. And they are deeply intimate for Harry himself. The shadow of Diana's struggle looms over every royal decision, casting a historical echo in aching ways. Her time in the monarchy was characterized by the struggle between appearances and reality. While adored by the crowd, she was lonely in the palace. In her chambers, she suffered in silence, struggling with eating disorders, depression, and betrayal. She found indifference when she called out for help. When she resisted, she was condemned. And when she tore free at last, it was as an outcast, stripped of her title and cast adrift from the very establishment she'd come to symbolize to so many. The king's decision on Archie and Lily is made in this same cool, dispassionate calculation. The institution defends itself by ostracizing its own, proving that blood means nothing when pitted against respectability and propriety. For those of us who are familiar with Diana's story, the separation of her grandchildren is not just about her lineage. It represents a lineage of cruelty that continues through the generations. Harry has spoken openly of how his mother's punishment shaped him. He often paints her as a woman broken by the limitations of life at the top of the royal food chain, someone who never lived up to the expectations imposed by the crown. In this respect, Meghan has been compared to Diana as well. Like Diana, Meghan came into the bosom of the family full of hope, only to be met with animus, alienation, and a steady diet of media attacks. Harry himself has drawn the comparison, saying in interviews that he was afraid that history would repeat itself and that if he didn't intervene, Meghan might meet the same fate as his mother. Now, with his children publicly disowned, Diana's echoes sound louder and louder, in a genuine frustration for Harry and soft fear as his family weather turmoil once again because of the institution meant to protect them. The media loves a useful parallel, if only to juxtapose pictures of Diana next to headlines about Archie and Lily, thus illuminating the similarities between Diana and Meghan, two outsiders who dared to buck tradition and suffered the consequences of disturbing the monarchy's image. In Diana's case, her sons were forced to witness the airing of her public humiliation and death. But in Meghan's case, her children are being denied recognition even before they firmly understand what their heritage is. The symmetry is unsettling. Underneath the media comparisons is a strong emotional bond. Diana's legacy is one of love and humanity. She was the people's princess, not because she held titles, but because she had a way of connecting with ordinary people and being compassionate in an otherwise distant and formal world. Estrangement from the monarchy caused widespread sympathy for her. Now the erasure of Archie and Lily Bit is conjuring up that same well of sympathy. They are seen as collateral, rather as Diana was seen as a victim of palace callousness. Rather than Lance the Boyle, the monarchy's decision only serves to open wounds that never truly scarred over, suggesting that far too much was not learned from the example set by Diana's life. For Harry, the echoes of his mother are at once wrenching and empowering. He's often said how he wishes to protect his family in a manner that Diana could never protect herself. The loss of her was the seminal tragedy of his life, a weight and a vocation that he bears. In interviews, he has said that every decision he makes is based on the question, "What would my mother have wanted in this most recent situation?" The response feels sadly apparent. Diana would have battled tooth and nail to shield her grandchildren and to see them recognized, and found it appalling that they were being left out in the cold. Harry knows this, and it only deepens his sense of betrayal by the palace. He sees the monarch as not just a sovereign but as the man who refused to listen to Diana's cries for help. Meghan has begun to be the same way with her grandchildren as she did with the Diana parallel. From her sartorial choices to the way she speaks out in interviews, she regularly drops hints about the connections she shares with Harry's late mother. Critics find this manipulative, while supporters find it natural. But right now the comparison transcends symbolism, it's felt to the core. Meghan can feel the same sense of being isolated and unloved, and now she sees the same kind of coldness towards her children that was displayed towards Diana. She responds that there are certain people waiting for them on this route who have become tragic. Little wonder that she and Harry focus on protection and survival so much. Not just fighting for their children, they are doing battle with a cycle that has already resulted in loss. The monarchy's position is also made more complex by the public's lasting memories of Diana. The past rule for Charles, now king, and for a time heavily criticized for his treatment of Diana, is currently being equally applied to his every move based on what Diana would have approved. Taking Archie and Lilibet out of the royal fold has also offered critics more material to work with. The story looks like it's almost writing itself. The man who hurt Diana is now hurting her grandchildren. Fair or no, that perception remains because Diana is revered in a way Charles never can be. In the public's eyes, his actions run the risk of being seen not as authoritative decisions but as continued cruelty through generations. What makes the Diana comparison hit so hard is that it is universal. Everyone's memory is branded with the news of her death. Those stirring images of her sons following her casket come to mind. Such a sad story, forever etched in the collective memory as a heartrending symbol of life under the monarchy. Seeing her grandchildren erased now feels like a continuation of that terrible story. To grandmother is to see the extinction line. It feels like the monarchy did actually never change. All the promises of modernity and empathy were just for show. The historical line of succession is clearly known, and such a provocative act becomes global in its intensity, knowing no boundary. She is missing right now, it seems, as if her voice should be there defending her grandchildren, but is struck dumb by history. These comparisons are not merely media agitprop, as the lives of Harry and Meghan, and their young children, make very clear. Now, the monarchy's latest choice has ripped open wound that had remained festering for decades, showing us that Diana's story is far from finished. It lives on in her son's struggles and in the future of her grandchildren. The world wonders if the past will one day be learned, or shall it remain history's child, passed down through the generations surrounded by gilded crown. Do you believe King Charles was right to strip Harry and Meghan's children from the line of succession, or was this the monarchy's biggest mistake yet? Share your thoughts in the comments, don't forget to like this video, and subscribe for more royal bombshells.